Before we begin, I would like to take a moment of silence on this anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts. Thank you. Hello! It has been a roller coaster of a day, and that's a text. I will be right back. Roller coaster of the day, including lots of texting and phone calls with parents. But those were good things, so... 2 chapters today, focusing on Weasley's Wizard Wheezes and the Portkey. And I have to admit that these were actually sort of really hard chapters to figure out exactly what I wanted to talk about, without crossing over too much, at least, with what I've discussed previously in other places. Because again, we're getting a few of those moments of the this way, that way type dealing that we've seen, particularly with Harry and Ron in the second book with the car incident and Molly's howler. But we're simply seeing it in person now and not through a howler or a letter of any sort. Instead, I've decided that I'm going to have to break this up into 2 parts. And the first one's probably going to be a little bit rambly because it's also a really deep message to us if we take the time to see it. And that is that you are never, ever, ever going to be able to please everybody. There's always going to be people of different opinions from yours, and some of those opinions might differ enough that they actually dislike you or your opinions. And this is okay. Because for you, those people don't matter. If you're not hurting anybody and you're taking care of yourself, those opinions don't matter. And we're actually seeing this with the Weasley children, because I think Percy is the only one that has a job that Molly is at all relatively okay with. None of the other brothers care. Like, she wants them all to go into the ministry, and the brothers recognize that's not for us. So we've got treasure hunter / curse breaker Bill. We've got dragon... I almost said tamer, but I don't think that's the word they use. Might be. Trainer? Caretaker? A dude that works with dragons, who that is, of course, Charlie. And we've got Percy, who's in the ministry handling cauldron bottoms right now. As a bit of a side note, his whole argument actually makes sense, and it is, well, maybe not to the general public as of right now, it is an important thing, because leakages are bad. We have seen potions explode. We don't need to get covered in this stuff, because the bottom is leaking. So no, I'm not with everybody else making fun of Percy. I think Percy is involved in something that he can see the merits in, and maybe not everybody else can. I think he's a little too stuck up about it, but I'm not writing him off completely. I think it's an important issue, and it's just one of those government things that people tend to, oh, that sounds boring and stuck up in bureaucracy, I don't want to hear it, when it's actually deeply important to our general safety. So keep going, Percy, except maybe calm down a little bit. Okay. Aside done. So then there's Fred and George, who, while still in school, have the plan to start their own business. And I think if it was anything other than pranks, their mother might be a little okay with this. But she's also upset because their grades are different. What she's failing, of course, to see is that these boys have to be really smart if they're inventing so much. Like, the descriptions we get of these order forms and everything they've invented says that these boys know what they're doing magic-wise. Or at least can figure it out, because we also recognize that they're testing things. There have been explosions, and they're noting the need to test things. Which is just, you know, the smart way of doing it, even if it is human testing, which is a whole other... You get the feeling they do a lot of self-testing, too. Because this is the first time we've heard about the possibility of testing on other things, and they've invented all of these pranks, so I get the feeling it's a lot of self-testing. And evidently they haven't permanently harmed themselves yet, so I mean, these boys are pretty smart. Ron and Ginny, of course, right now are still in school, and not being as big of pranksters or entrepreneurial spirits, don't have plans for starting their own business, so we're not seeing them yet. And I'm not going to look at their extra canon stuff. I'm just looking at what we have in the book series right now. And this is a plethora of jobs in many different fields. And Molly agrees with about one of them. But everyone's persevering in what they want to do here. They've recognized that while they enjoy having their mother's approval, it is not the end-all and be-all. They need to do what they are interested in doing ahead of everybody else. And I think Arthur knows that his wife can be a little sharp about this and not as permitting. Because while he threatens Fred and George in telling Molly, he doesn't actually mean to, as close as Harry can tell watching them, except that Molly overhears him threatening to tell her, and so he has to admit it. And we see that she does lash out, but not in a way that's actually going to discourage these two. Fred and George know what they want to do, and they're going to keep aiming for it. And we're going to see that they have some hiccups, particularly the fact that they end up betting and get paid off with fake money in hopes of having some funding. But they're willing to fight for what they want to do. And if the grades aren't the important thing, then for them the grades aren't the important thing. It's simply a question of knowing yourself well enough and knowing when to pick your battles. Harry meeting Mr. Diggory is having a cringeworthy realization of not everyone is going to agree with you. Because everyone in that situation, except Mr. Diggory, is looking at him like, this is not the time. This is not the place. Even Cedric's like, Dad, he fell off his broom and Mr. Diggory's going for it. Can they say really anything against him? No. It is his opinion, and again, maybe he's being like Percy and being very stuck up. But you have to allow for other people's opinions. If you want them to respect yours, you certainly have to respect others. And I think that's what a lot of these Weasley kids are learning with their mom, is just, okay, she's gonna have her opinion, and we have ours. And when it is in regards to ourselves, our opinion matters more. Cool. It's not like Molly refuses to have them over for the holidays or special events or anything. So while she can be very forceful and loud, and sometimes a little misdirected, particularly with the Howlers, and her decision to argue with Fred and George on this one, I don't think she's the worst person in this entire series, like, at all. And I think she has her own style of mothering that maybe we're not seeing fully. But we can see bits and pieces of it, because it's not like you disagree with her and you're out. You're still family. She'll just poke you a lot about it. Part 2! Not quite as rambly, a little more bit to the point. Magic is frickin' dangerous! I'm not even talking about, like, offensive spells in the dark arts. I mean just dangerous. Like, the lead up to the port key is a discussion of apparition, which is a discussion of how you can literally split yourself in two. And that's not someone doing that to you. That is you getting this magical thing wrong and doing that to yourself. That's the interesting thing, is it then plays off this cauldron conversation, because you have to get a license to be able to apparate. It is an apparent enough injury that it concerns everybody. And Harry's just picturing an eye and a foot going like... So if this is a safety concern, we should be aware when other people, even if they're the ones we want to sort of burp, are mentioning safety concerns. Like Percy with the cauldron bottoms. Magic is a very useful thing, but it is also extremely dangerous even to the people that use it. If you use it wrong, abuse it, make mistakes, or try to take advantage of it, it will cut you to pieces. In this case, quite literally. Even the port key, which seems to have less that can go wrong than apparition or even the flu, still knocks most of them off their feet. And I'm not just talking about Harry and Hermione, who are Muggle born and raised. I'm talking about the younger Weasley kids. Well, actually all the Weasley kids in that incident. Yeah, because the older Weasley kids are going to apparate. Like, it collapses them. And that's the thing, like, this also comes back to the wand chooses the wizard. Magic itself seems to at least have its limits, that it will snap back if you pull it too far. So I think, knowing that, we have to start asking ourselves if it is a conscious, sentient agency that magic is having in this moment. Or if it is simply the laws of the physics and things like that. Do we have the wand choosing the wizard, or simply the wood and core reacting to the magical core in Harry? Those two seem to be different things. And in a moment like this, where we can see how dangerous it is for even a slight misstep, I think it's one we need to be aware of. If magic is its own agent, what does that say about magic as a whole? And I don't think we have answers right now. I don't think we maybe will ever get answers. But we can at least keep it in mind going forward. Okay, so I'm gonna get back to my roller coaster of a day. Rowling has apologized this year for the death of Remus Lupin. With the note, of course, that she made a choice between characters, and Arthur Weasley survived. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind, that for a writer, these are characters that are just as dear to her as anyone else. So choices like that have to be made, but they're not easy ones. So I think her apologies are in earnest, even if we maybe will never forgive her for the choices she made. But you couldn't please everyone, right? So I'm gonna keep reading, and I hope you guys do too. See you next time.